Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where my brother Pete is at some undisclosed location, approximately the same location as the shoppers that disappeared last month. At least that's according to retail sales. We'll have the 411 for you right after this on the Rebel's Edge. Bang! Welcome to the Rebel's Edge, everybody. Normally, sitting over there is my brother Pete Nigerian, but he's not. Like I say, he's at an undisclosed location. And Alex Macioli, the CEO of Trade the Chain, good enough to sit in for Pete today. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thank you very much, John.
Big shoes to fill here. I might add. But nonetheless, it's good to have you, Alex. Alex and I were out on his yacht yesterday, folks, enjoying his hospitality and some freaking fantastic weather down here in Puerto Rico. And today we're going to bring you some fantastic news. The market's up another 500 points. That's the Dow Jones Industrials. So the Trump rally continues, Alex.
Absolutely. The Trump rally is something that's going to be making headlines going into the elections, particularly after what has transpired the last couple of days. So good for the market.
Yes, and absolutely.
Whatnot.
And we'll dive right in, folks, to Macro Minute, which is, of course, U.S. retail sales. Now, these were not good. They showed virtually zero growth from the previous month. So that's a stagnation in consumer spending, along with a drop in our exports as well. So clearly the economy's stuttering here, folks. And I'm not making a joke about stutterers. I'm just saying the economy's stuttering. And Alex, do you think we're likely to see people perhaps that were waiting for Prime Day, because we're in the midst of it now, were people that were waiting for Prime Day putting off purchases? And maybe that's why we're seeing the shopping so muted in June?
Well, hopefully that's the case. I mean, Amazon Prime Day advertising is definitely on the rise the last week. And as we've seen, it keeps surpassing its record for the previous year every single time. So hopefully that's what it is. We're also going into summer. So hopefully a lot of people are maybe spending that money and diverting it towards cruises or vacations as we go into the warm months.
You could be right, Alex. And by the way, folks, a tip from your friendly doctor here, Dr. J. When you know we're coming into a Prime Day, and they don't just have one, they have multiple per year. When you know we're coming into a Prime Day, what I do is I fill my cart with a bunch of stuff that I would be interested in buying, and then I wait for the Prime Day. And if any of that stuff is up there for sale on Prime Day, bang! Like I say, there's a little tip from your friendly Dr. J. Let's dive
Dr.
in.
J, what are you getting me on Prime Day? Do I have some presents in there or what?
I'm getting you a captain's hat.
All right, sounds good.
By the way, folks, fantastic futures is what we usually follow up Macro Minute with. And today, Alex, I'm going to say it's gold, extending the rally, trading just right up against an all-time high, raising hopes that the Federal Reserve is indeed going to cut interest rates, appears to be the catalyst. And today, the interest rates for the 10-year broke 4.2%. They traded into the 4.1% area. Alex, what do you have as far as fantastic futures? Oil or interest rates or something else?
Well, no, I absolutely. You know, I like energy, but it's hard to look away from what you just mentioned, gold, because our friend Peter Schiff must be jumping up and down with joy, particularly with Bitcoin being more or less a sideways trade going through this summer. So Gold is looking good. It's still, in my opinion, not the best lifetime investment, but that's a debate for a different time. Yeah, no, I think gold is the way to go. Energy right now, I'd love to get your thoughts real quick on what energy looks like and what those futures might come about.
My number one pick, energy, because we're going to need a lot more of it, folks. My friends in New Jersey already experienced rolling blackouts. California's had those. We're going to see more and more of that, unfortunately, Alex. I don't root for that, but I think those will drive Camco, the uranium, NNE, also uranium, or at least a miniature nuclear reactor that can be on site rather than 100 miles away with big cooling towers and all that. There are some fabulous solutions out there, folks. We have to start deploying them now, because when you start putting out as many as 500 million iPhones, the new iPhones, Alex, that's what they're saying. Over the next 2 years, maybe 500 million more iPhones out there. And they're going to switch to them because of the Apple intelligence, the AI that's going to be embedded only in the newest stuff. It's got to be iPhone 15 or higher. So that's going to drive a lot of electricity demand as well, Alex.
And listen, speaking of energy, while you and I were, casually floating off the island of Vieques yesterday, we did have a discussion on, the different trends and what that consumption looks like. A lot of people were after Bitcoin miners just a couple of years ago for energy consumption. And now you bring up a good point. As we discussed, AI is entering that category as an energy consumer. So it seems to keep up with the pace is getting more and more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like I say, one of the reasons that I think XLU, the utility spider, is something all of you should keep an eye on, folks. We don't really make recommendations here, but we tell you what we're doing. And I would definitely keep your eye on that. I own a lot of things in that space, a lot of stocks. All right, let's talk about Charles Schwab, Alex. One of the biggest brokers on earth. They traded down after their CFO told investors the company may look to reduce from its level of debt. Now, how do you do that? Well, one of two ways, Alex. Either A, get more revenue in, which all companies would like to do, or B, if they can't do that, you're faced with basically cutting expenditures. And apparently, one of those expenditures that people are concerned about is the stock repurchase, which obviously takes cash from the treasury to do that. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing Schwab move to the downside today. Right, Alex?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the stock repurchase is a double-edged sword too, because as you go to take that away, people start to get worried in the fact that there's more sell pressure in the market than what they were promised, which is taking that off the table. As far as Charles Schwab looking to de-risk itself from bank exposure, that's probably a smart thing considering what we've seen in the last couple of years from macro level. But I'm also want to get your thoughts. We have boomers, really plowing money into wealth management, and we have MS on the sheet here to cover next. How do you see that affecting as far as money going into wealth management, such as Charles Schwab, or have we peaked at that boomer rate, and it's just going to level off from here?
I think as long as we have earners out there, it hasn't peaked, because the money that's in will continue to be into the hands of money managers, that is, folks, whether they're at Charles Schwab operating with their own shingle that they happen to hang up at Schwab, or whether it's somebody like the tens of thousands of brokers at Morgan Stanley. I think, Alex, the money that's in there stays there. Yeah, when you have deaths and so forth, you have a passing of the torch and the money from one family member to another. But I think when they see how those assets have grown in value, many of the even youngest millennial types will end up sticking with some of those same money managers that their mom and dad or grandfather and grandmother we're with. So I just see this as something that grows year by year. And the competition is something that we talked about yesterday with Goldman Sachs and those numbers. And Goldman's moving up again today, by the way, folks. And since Alex mentioned it, let's dive into Morgan Stanley, because their stock, unlike Goldman Sachs, moving down following the release of their Q2 earnings report. They beat on expectations, but they're basically, and they have a 8 million share buyback. Yeah, they executed a buyback of 8 million shares, I guess I should say, Alex. But some of their debt is a little bit concerning as far as the repayment of that debt from the debtors out there. That's something I think that people were focused on that weren't that happy with this report.
I think it could have been much worse, though. And listen, they beat revenue, they beat EPS, and they did $750 million in share buyback. I think that was probably the right step compared to what Charles Schwab is planning on doing. But I think that was their hedge against that bad debt.
Right. Well, and folks, keep in mind, too, that the stock opened down $1. It was down as much as $2.50 in the pre-market, traded down to 103.5, I think, something like that, Alex. Maybe it was 103 in the pre. But as we head through midday here, it's back up through 108, and it's up almost 3% after being down almost the same amount this morning. So big turnaround for Morgan Stanley. People finally paying attention to what they really did in the quarter, not just some of the worries about maybe what they might do going forward. And the turnover is double normal turnover, Alex. Normal is about, I'm looking at 5.8 million shares. It's already done almost double that, over 10 million in the first few hours of trading. So a big turnaround for Morgan. And I think overall, the numbers you mentioned, money management and wealth management, I think that's one of the areas here that they're really starting to shine with right here, Alex. So a very positive move for them. All right, let's dive into United Health. These guys, people love to demonize anybody in the healthcare space. Pete loves the healthcare space. But let me tell you about this one. It was $515 on the close yesterday, Alex. That was the close, $515.37. Right now, it's trading $541, a pretty substantial jump to the upside. So when you've got a big move like that, the pre-market was strong, adjusted EPS beat. They were $6.80 versus $6.66, the devil's number. And a big revenue increase was how they did it. They did almost $99 billion from last year's figure. So a very strong report. Not surprisingly, the stock moving up better than 5% so far at mid-session, Alex.
Yeah, United Healthcare, not much to say there, but it kind of ties into my boomer role from the wealth management side, and that is, listen, as the major generation ages, healthcare is just going to continue to beat. Everybody's needs it, and now we have the largest swath of the population utilizing it. So I see earnings on healthcare groups going up and up over the course of the next 5 years.
Well, I don't think anybody's happy about their health insurance costs going up. Yeah, and not that Alex said that they were, because none of us are happy about that. The only people that might be somewhat happy are United Health and the health insurers, because they certainly suffered at times this year, Alex, when all of a sudden everybody were coming in for treatments of things that they didn't do during COVID because they couldn't. All right. Last stock, let's talk about Match.com. So this is even affecting Bumble and a bunch of other stocks, Grindr. Starboard Value, they step in and they send a letter to Match Group basically saying, hey, we've been building a position here. We believe Match is a growing high-quality market leader. That's a direct quote, folks, with an enviable position in expanding online dating market. That's Match.com. Well, they laid out their own plan, saying they don't know if Match.com really is recognizing the opportunity that is before them. If they don't, look for Starboard to get more aggressive with Match.com, because they said this turnaround could be challenging, but we think it's worth it. And if Match doesn't agree, well, Starboard is one of those activist investor groups, Alex, that is likely to go after them pretty hard.
Yeah, Starboard, when they get their teeth sunk into something, they continue to see that fight through, for sure. I mean, as far as Match is concerned, I feel that this is their game to lose right now. I mean, we have millennials coming up, and widespread reports, about how there's more disconnect when it comes to dating. They're spending less times face to face in bars, in those one-on-one introductions. So I think you're going to see growth through that sector more on the virtual side of meeting people and arranging dates than back when you and I were younger pups.
Yeah, I'll take the old version of it, by the way, but I'm a married spud, so I'm not in the dating scene. All right, let's talk a little bit about sports. We don't have Pete with us today, again, at an undisclosed location, but indeed, Alex and I are both sports fans. Alex attends a lot of the Guanabo Mets basketball. Is that your team here on the island, Alex?
I mean, listen, our mutual friend is one of the owners of the Puerto Rican league team, Guanabo Mets, and whenever I get offered a courtside seat, I definitely take him up on it.
Well, I think Puerto Rico has a rich heritage of great basketball and volleyball, both men and women, folks. And if you didn't already know it, their basketball team, the national team in Puerto Rico, not the pro league that Alex and I are talking about, but some of those players from the pro league have already qualified for the Olympics. So these guys are no joke. And by the way, that'll lead us into the second story, which I'll hold off on, about the USA basketball team. But let's talk about Skip Bayless for a second, Alex, because Skip Bayless, I've got a couple things to say. One, a lot of people are unaware, but one of the top chefs in the nation is a guy named Rick Bayless. And Rick Bayless is Skip Bayless's brother. Now, a lot of you know him from, I think it's Mexico One Dish at a Time, which was a TV show that he did for years. He might still be doing it. He was my wife's neighbor for a number of years, Rick Bayless was. And Topo Lombambo and a couple of his other big restaurants have done exceedingly well in Chicago, at airports, as well as across the country. Well, his brother happens to be one of the premier talk show hosts on Fox Sports 1. And, they called the show Undisputed. And apparently now, after joining Fox Sports in 2016, so it's been, I guess, a strong 8-year run, he is going to be leaving sometime this summer. And I'm sure there's more to this story than we're hearing right now, but all they've told us so far, Alex, is he is following Sterling Sharp out the door. He is no longer going to be Fox Sports 1 Undisputed in the coming months. They didn't even give us a date yet, Alex.
Wow. And, there's been shakeups over the last couple of years at ESPN2 and other networks. I mean, is this where he's going to see where, maybe his 8-year run has taken him as far as being a hiring superstar? I mean, that could very well be. ESPN has a lot of holes in their rosters that they've been trying to fill for 24 months. And some have been sticking and some haven't. So maybe it's a bigger payday at a bigger network.
It could be. It could be that they found out that he was negotiating. I don't know the terms of his contract. Most of these contracts, folks, because both Alex and I have had those contracts, most of those TV or streaming contracts the nature is that you have to negotiate exclusively with the person, with the group that you signed with for a period of time. And then after that time, in some cases, they have the ability to match. In other cases, they don't. I don't know what the details are of Skip's contract, but perhaps they found out that he was already testing the waters or that his agent was. And so they said, look, we're going to end this thing now rather than letting you build value for yourself while you're getting ready to leave us. Again, I don't know that that's the case. I'm just trying to read through here, Alex. And, as you and I try to do all the time, you on the cryptocurrency side, me on the stock side, we look for unusual activity. And this is indeed unusual for them to make an announcement like this a lot sooner than anyone expected. All right. We talked about the Guanabo Mets. Most of you have never heard of the Guanabo Mets basketball team. But by the way, and Alex knows this to be true, they rent the name Metropolitan or Mets to Stevie Cohen and the New York baseball Mets because they had it trademarked first. That's kind of an interesting stat, isn't it, Alex?
I think there's a lot of interesting stats on the island, but that one is a famous one. I wonder if the Mets licensing agreement with Stevie, moves the needle at all in the Mets budget up in Queens.
Well, the USA basketball team is winning ugly. And why do I say that? Well, because basically they just got by Australia, another location, another country that has a pretty darn good basketball team, but they weren't supposed to give us this much trouble. It was 98-92, Alex. So that certainly, some of our stars like Anthony Edwards, Pete's favorite player, Ant, as they call him, or Devin Booker, they were both putting up the big numbers, but a lot of their other players like LeBron James barely got into double digits. So does this scare you at all heading into the Paris Olympics, Alex? Or is this just, it's a tune-up game in Dubai. They probably had distractions, and this isn't really the same team that we'll see on the court in Paris in the next couple weeks. Which do you think?
Well, I hope not. Dubai is much like Las Vegas. So there are a lot of distractions, as you say. But also I think sometimes we may not play at full force, saving ourselves for the more important games that are coming up. And Paris is going to be very important. It's going to be a lot of competitors out there on the courts. I will say this harkens up 1992. I mean, listen, my favorite basketball team of all time was the 92 Dream Team. You couldn't, I mean, they ran over people, double the score of their opponents. But yes, USA basketball, men's basketball is something that we're revered for. And we've always shown strength in it. And I think it might be a little bit of an embarrassment if we start losing to teams we should be winning for.
Right? It always would be. And by the way, they play Serbia tomorrow. And you don't need to look a lot further than a couple NBA rosters to see some very good Serbian players. So it's truly a global game. And again, we're not making fun of Australia or Puerto Rico or Serbia or Brazil for that matter. I mean, there are so many good basketball teams around the world that our guys better be ready, Alex. But I'm not concerned yet. I'm not concerned yet. But I think this is a little bit of a wake-up call to just basically skate by Australia. Again, a team that they were probably favored by 15-20. And instead, it's like a 6-point game. So with all that said, folks, remember, you need to pick up our book. It's Not an Option. If you go to itsnotanoption.com, you can grab this book. You pay, I think, under $10 for the shipping, but the book itself is free. It is some 245 pages. So this is not just a picture book or a little thin booklet. This is a real book, folks. And you can get this book, itsnotanoption.com, by going to itsnotanoption.com. We want to thank Alex Macioli right over there. Alex, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for letting me be a rebel for a day.
Well, you're a rebel every day. But thanks for joining us, folks. Make sure you check out Trade the Chain for all kinds of great crypto intelligence. And we will be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.